Well, folks, I got to say, Marvel definitely they went with the more interesting choice, and I appreciate that for this Loki season 1 finale. So yeah, my name's Anaji. This is FMV Reviews, and today I'm going to be talking about Loki episode 6. I'm going to be kind of doing this a little differently, where my synopsis is basically going to be my review. So yeah, we basically open up, and Loki and Sylvie go inside of this building, and I couldn't help but notice that I think the building is inspired by this Japanese technique called kintsugi, where basically like if a pot or pan breaks, instead of replacing it and making a whole new pot, you basically take the pieces and you use this like gold lacquering, I think that's what it's called, and you basically stitch it back together. And I think from a philosophy standpoint, it's interesting because it kind of embraces mistakes, right? So many times when things break, especially, we're told to just replace it, and that's some things it's understandable, but there's other things where it's like, what if you embrace the fact that it's not perfect anymore? Because as humans, we're not perfect. So I was wondering if this castle was inspired by that. We end up having where the Lokis run into Miss Minutes, who's basically saying the person who lives in this place is giving them a bunch of different options. All the Lokis, they both decide to not take it. And I couldn't help but notice that the lighting in this scene, it made it seem almost like they looked like frost giants. I don't know if that was on purpose, but that was a detail that I noticed. I like the fact too for this intro that they're leaning into the eeriness of this situation. They're not really playing it like an action scene. They're really building up the tension of who is this person that lives in this place. And I appreciated that. It eventually gets revealed who it is, and it's basically this man. It's a brother, you know what I'm saying? But for me, I was like, oh, it's Tick from Lovecraft Country. So I love that actor. And man, he's definitely giving a very different performance than in Lovecraft. I'd actually be really interested to see some of his other movies to see how versatile of a performer he is, because this is a pretty crazy role. And then we go back to the TVA, and Mobius has walked into Ramona's office, except he's got one of those delete sticks. I'm gonna call it that, delete sticks. And it's basically like, yeah, I'm back. Yeah, you thought you killed me, but I'm back. And basically he's pissed. You know what I'm saying? So she basically tries to call these guards in to get rid of him, and no one shows up, and she's like, what's going on? And he was like, yeah, like I said, things are a little different. We cut to a scene with Ruby, and she's in the past with the TVA agents pursuing her, and this one TVA agent finds her, and she says, hold on a second, this is going to explain everything. And then in walks Ramona, except she's not Ramona. She's not the head of the TVA. And then basically kind of very quickly summing up, hey, the reason the guards did not show up for Ramona is because everybody in the TVA now knows that they are variants, and they've been being used to kill other variants. And then we cut back to the Lokis, and they're going with He Who Remains. And basically Marvel starts going existential meta horror with it, where he basically is like, hey, I already knew you guys were going to be here. Everything you've done up until this point, I allowed to happen to get you both here. I'm really the one like in control. And they're not wanting to believe him. And he basically shows them a script with literally the things they're saying in the moment. And yeah, it's pretty eerie. There's even a point where they're kind of asking him, okay, if we have no free will and we were going to come here anyway, then what was the point of all this stuff? Just why didn't you just get us here? And he basically is like, no, like you have to go on the journey. This is how these things works to get you to a place where you could be here. And it's kind of a meta sort of thing, because it very much, if you're into screenwriting or into writing stories, there's Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey. It's basically a thing where this guy studied a bunch of different stories from a bunch of different areas and noticed similarities between how the most beloved of these stories tended to move. And I like that they kind of added this sort of meta element here. It definitely makes this guy scary, but not in a typical way. And I appreciated that. We cut back to TVA, and Mobius is done with Ramona's crap, and he goes to prune her, and he's just asking her questions like, you know that you're a variant, you know that the Time Lords are a lie, why are you because she's trying to maintain the importance of the TVA because she's a bootlicker. And yeah, Mobius goes to prune her, and this is something I've been wondering for a little while. And it was, does Mobius have hands? The answer is no, he doesn't. He gets the stick taken away and gets kicked in the chest, and that's pretty much it for him. She decides not to prune him, and then she's going to leave through a portal, and he asks, where are you going? And she's like, I'm going to go search for free will. I have no idea what that means. This kind of feels like that Marvel setting up seeds in the future thing. Then we cut back to Loki and Sylvie. The guy, He Who Remains, basically tells them how they got into the situation that they're in. He basically tells the story I was this guy from the 31st century. I discovered that there are multiple universes, that there's a theory out there that there are multiple universes, that for every decision you didn't make, there's another universe where you made that decision, that we're all living in a multiverse thing. I don't know if it's proven. I don't know if it's true. It's an interesting concept. You get some interesting sci-fi stuff from it. But basically he reveals that he discovered this, and then all the other versions of him also discovered it. So they started trading technology through each other's universes. But unfortunately, some versions of him were not looking to trade peacefully. They were looking to conquer. They were like, okay, another reality, that's new frontiers for me to take over. So basically this huge multiversal war broke out. Eventually the version that we're talking to right now discovered the Alioth, this thing that could break down space and matter, and weaponized it and basically used it to put all the timelines back, all the multiverses back in their own places. And basically he developed the TVA as a way to make sure that no other universes can get to our universe. That's basically the exposition. They luckily use this cool animation. I'm starting to realize, hey, if you're gonna have an exposition dump, put some cool animation there. It'll make it more interesting to watch. And they do it here. And I like the fact that Marvel's finally acknowledging that we are going into multiversal stuff. And I am excited. I'm excited for that. And then basically, He Who Remains tells the two Lokis why he has them there, and he basically says, okay, so here's two choices. This is the only two choices that are available. You can kill me, and our universe won't be under my protection anymore, and all the other versions of me can basically come through, and it'll cause chaos and possibly end all existence. Or you two take over the TVA, make it a better corporation, and we can keep the safety of our universe there. There's only two choices he presents them. And yeah, so Sylvie's not wanting to believe it. She thinks he's stalling and trying to trick them. And he basically calls her out, being like, you're a murderer. You're a hypocrite. For you to judge me for being cold and callous, it's like, what about all those people you killed to get here? Like, we're all monsters here. You too, Loki. You were trying to destroy New York. You pulled out a dude's eye and killed a bunch of citizens in New York. Like, come on, we're all bad guys here. And I enjoyed that he did that because I think this show has been doing a lot of stuff to kind of like make this Loki a hero, but we have to remember that he's a bad guy. He has hurt people, quite a few people. So I like that he brought that back up. And then we get this really interesting acting moment, and it makes me so excited to see Jonathan Majors possibly continue to play this character, where he has a moment where he confesses that he doesn't know how everything's going to go, and that he knew what was going to happen up until about 10 seconds ago. And we get to see that moment play across his face where he realizes that he doesn't know what's going to happen anymore. And yeah, it's just like a mixture of like excitement and like dread and like happy and sadness, and he's worried, but he's also kind of excited. Really great actor. I hope to get to see him to do more. But then yeah, basically Sylvie goes to kill He Who Remains, and Loki gets in her way, trying to tell her we need to take a second to think about this, because this is a really big choice. Even if this guy is lying, which I don't think he is, but if he's not lying, if we kill him, we might make things worse. And yeah, this is the drama and stakes that I'm here for, basically, because Sylvie's like, I don't care. I'm gonna kill him. And you basically have this fight scene break out because she doesn't trust him, because she thinks he still wants power, and he's trying to convince her that, no, I don't care about that anymore. We need to take a second to think about this. And they get into what I think is one of Marvel's most interesting fights, because both sides are right and wrong in a certain kind of way. And those are I think ever since Civil War, that's the last time I found one of their fights like really interesting, except maybe Thanos or Killmonger. But yeah, like it's a really interesting battle. The choreography or nothing is not super fancy, but the emotional stakes are there. I hope Marvel takes that lesson of like, hey, don't worry about your action scenes being so crazy. Make sure the writing and the emotional stakes are there, and it almost doesn't matter how good the choreography is necessarily. And then basically we have it where Loki, to get Sylvie to stop, uses himself as a shield and basically tells her like, I care about you. Like, we need to take a second to think about this, but I also care about you. And finally, Marvel has done what we've all hoped for. Marvel got weird, baby, because the Lokis kiss. They kiss. Yes. But unfortunately, that moment is undercut because it turns out Sylvie was partially using it as a distraction, kicks Loki into a time portal back to the TVA so she can basically kill He Who Remains. Yeah, it's pretty harsh. I know that Sylvie's making a pretty bad choice, but at the same time, I don't blame her, man. Like, her life has been very traumatic. She's been running from apocalypse to apocalypse for like 30 to 40 years, maybe. Yeah, and then we cut back to the TVA where Loki, heartbroken Loki, there's this really great shot where it's just a oneer slowly going in on Tom Hiddleston's face as you see all these emotions play out on Loki's face of like, he's hurt, he feels betrayed. There's even a moment where I thought he was going to go back to being evil, and he remembers he's in the TVA, so he runs to go find Mobius, and this cool running shot. Shouts out to the cinematography, that was pretty dope. And he ends up finding Mobius and Ruby and basically telling them, hey, we found this guy, this is what's going on. And then they say to him, who are you? Are you an analyst? Revealing that they don't know who he is. And then he looks over and sees where there used to be a Time Lord statue. He now sees a He Who Remains statue. Yeah, now I'm thinking like, holy crap, is Loki like in a different freaking dimension? And yeah, man, that's basically how it ends. And I have to say, I'm glad that Marvel went with a more interesting choice. I know they did a pretty good job in the writing, because I was feeling conflicted of which choice was the right choice, but luckily the viewer and the writer in me was like, kill that dude, I want to see the multiversal stuff, that's the crazier option. Marvel's got the budget to do it, let's go there. And luckily they chose to do it, and in the credits we get a confirmation that there's going to be a season 2. And I have to say that I am excited. It's good to see that one of these TV shows is not just like a bridge story, that actually, at least the way this one ends, it probably is going to be something that affects all the Marvel, this whole phase of the Marvel universe. So yeah, and with that, I'm going to say for Loki episode 6, the season finale of season 1, I'm going to give it a strong 8 out of 10. Yeah, let me know what you guys thought about it, and I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.